Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron, and I'm back with another exciting ilClan mech review. This time we're looking at a clan classic, the Executioner. And we're going to be doing a little comparo, a little shootout, if you will, of the Executioner Prime and a new guy. This is very exciting, the Executioner Alt Config J. So we know the Prime. It's got the Gauss, got a couple of large lasers, got some machine guns, for anti-infantry action. It's a giant mech, 95 tons with jump jets. A lot of that, that sort of core stuff, right? The jump jets, the armor, the things that make an Omni-Mech, obviously don't change, but the armament completely changes. And what you get is the mighty HAG 40, a Hyper Assault Gauss Rifle 40. There are a couple other Executioner variants, and we talked about which ones we wanted to compare. There's one with a HAG 20, one with a HAG 30, but I really wanted to compare it against the Prime variant because I think that, when I think about the Executioner, this is like my go-to variant in Classic. It's very expensive, but it's just so mean and so tough. So anyway, guys, we're going to check these out. Thanks to the team over at Catalyst for sending over the Executioner J. This guy is in the ilClan Recognition Guide Volume 9. So if you have not gotten your hands on the recognition guides, I cannot stress enough how awesome they are. From a lore perspective, they're very cool from just, the flavor of the TRO, the technical readouts in general. There's some new mechs. There's a lot of old existing ones like the Executioner, the Zeus, the Marauder, the Archer. They all get sort of these ilClan upgrades. So it's just really neat to page through them. And they're like $4, guys. They're $4 on Drive-Thru-RPG. You can read them on your iPad. You can download them, print them out, whatever. But very good buy, so definitely check those out. But which one's going to win? The Prime or the J? The old or the new? Guys, stay tuned. We're going to run them both through Battlytics, and we'll find out. All right, so we're going to start with the Prime. We'll do a little overview, then we'll look at the J. So we talked a lot about this in the intro. The Prime 2749 BV, 95-ton Clan Assault mech. This one was produced in 3001, not to be confused with 2001. I don't know much about 3001 except for the Executioner was built somewhere in clan space. So again, we talked about the movement profile. It's iconic. It's got jump jets, 464. It has a dissipation of 38. That's just immense amount of heat sinks mounted to this mech. It's got a Clan XL fusion engine. Clan XLs are great, only take up 2 criticals. And of course it has ferrofibrous armor as well, standard structure. In terms of armor mass, it's only got 13.5 tons. It is a tough mech, but it's just sort of weird to me. I feel like too many heat sinks, not enough armor. We'll see. We'll see what Battlytics thinks about that. If you look at the center diagram, what is equally scary is the arms and legs 100% maxed out. The side torsos not so much. Center torso looks pretty good in terms of where it's at. What I thought was interesting, the Prime has the upper actuator only on the left arm, the right arm, where the ER large lasers are, it's packing all the actuators, upper, lower, and hand. Now on this particular mech, this is going to matter when we talk about the J, the Gauss rifle is strictly mounted in the left arm, right? So it gets free to do that arm flipping. It has basically line of sight into the rear arc, which is a huge advantage. So, very cool. The Clan Omni-Mechs, when they mount these things like an ERPPC or a Clan Gauss or any of these big weapons, it just automatically strips off that lower actuator. So, pretty interesting. Anyhow, let's talk about the equipment. This thing has mask on it. So, very cool. So, it can actually run up to 8 hexes or 8 inches And when used, we'll see this in the mobility analysis, when used sparingly, it can actually really juice up your target mod and make this thing incredibly formidable. I don't think you'd ever want to close with this particular variant, but keeping enemies in the sweet spot at the right range, very, very valuable. So between the mask and the jump jets, awesome equipment, and then again, Gauss, MG ammo in the left and right torsos, respectively. All right, so let's look at the J. Also 95 tons, 464 on the movement profile. This one has a battle value of 2891, so just a little bit more than that prime. Dissipation drops a bit to 32, so just a few less double heat sinks there. XL engine, ferrofibrous armor, all of that is the same. The big difference is on the weapon side, the loadout, right? So still has the mask, that's the same. But it has a HAG 40 and 3 SRM 6s. So the first thing to point out is that the HAG is on the right arm, and those criticals bleed into the right torso. So a couple of things there. It only has an upper arm actuator on the right arm, but it cannot arm flip because that weapon does, again, sort of live in that right torso as well as the right arm. And then it's got 3 arm-mounted SRM 6s. So at first glance, I'm like, wow, primarily arm-mounted weapons, that's a little scary. But again, looking at the armor distribution, most of the arms are maxed out, right? So it's weird. I'm interested to see how this one does. It looks like it has a lot of potential, but then when you look at the ammo and equipment, it's only got 12 rounds on the HAG 40 and 30 rounds on the SRM 6s. That means 10 rounds per launcher. So in about 10 turns, this thing is going to be pretty ineffective. But let's take a look and see how it shakes out. So offensive benchmarks first. Okay, so on the offensive side, what do we have here? Well, we've got the Prime, we've got the Alt Config J. The Alt Config J is the one that is more translucent, the lighter colors. Immediately, the first thing we notice here, neither mech capable of building up any heat. So another clan mech that is oversunk. It really seems like a recurring theme. I'm not sure if the clan pilots don't like it hot, or if the mechs are designed this way. I mean, I guess if you fire the jump jets, you know, maybe you lost a couple heat sinks, whatever. But yeah, it just really seems like a waste of tonnage to me. I'd rather have a couple of clan ER mediums on there or something along those lines. But anyway, in terms of the damage, both of these have very similar damage curves. They put out a little bit at sort of the back, and then it gets a little bit greater as you move into close range. The main difference is the Prime does more damage out to about 10 inches. They cross at 9 inches, and then the J outperforms the Prime in close. Total damage output is also pretty similar, 268.1 average calculated damage on the Prime, and 287.1 on the Alt Config J. So you're looking at just south of 20 points of damage difference over 12 turns, which, again, it's notable, but it's not substantial, again, especially considering you're paying a little bit more for the J out of the gate. So let's see how lethality looks. So onto the kill analysis and how those kills break down. Primarily on the Prime, you're looking at CT kills, although it's got 18.5% head kills. That's very high. And again, courtesy of those large lasers, courtesy of the Gauss rifle, those are big damage weapons. The head on the Javelin, intentionally, right, it has 7 points of armor, 3 points of structure, so a 10-point shot is going to register a head kill, and that's the kind of thing we want to look for. So the J, on the other hand, has 8.7%. That's pretty average in terms of head kills. A much higher percentage of engine kills, and that's courtesy of fragging the target and generating a ton of criticals from that HAG 40. So by the numbers, on the Prime, damage per hit is a staggering 10.7. That's huge. Critical hits, it's only 2.8. Why? Well, it doesn't have a lot of weapons. And then time to kill is the average time was 6.2 turns to kill that Javelin. On the J, 3.4 points of damage per hit. Not very high. And a hit is not just the HAG 40, but every cluster, right? So when we look at that, the SRM damage, so on and so forth, that brings that average way down. However, the crits at 6.1, I would have expected that number to be a lot higher. You've got 8 clusters coming in from the HAG. You've got multiple, 18 really clusters coming in from the SRM6. So I would have expected that number to be a little bit higher, but it's not wrong. It is what it is. The time to kill on this one, average 8.1. So again, still very good. 8.1 is fantastic. 10 is about average. 6.2 though, really good. So from a lethality perspective, I think the prime is going to take the cake. But let's take a look at defensive. We still have a lot to dive into. Survivability curve, basically identical. You're looking at 91.1 on the prime and 92.5 on the J. So what's different? There's a 0.6% ammo death chance on the prime. Why is that? Well, it has machine gun ammo, which is extremely volatile, mounted in the right torso. That location is cased. However, if the mech has taken an engine hit prior to the ammo detonation, it will wipe out the remaining 2 criticals for that engine. It will knock the mech out of commission, and Battlytics will count that as an ammo kill rather than an engine death. So you can kind of see there that Executioner facing down some of that, dealing with that. But overall, what's interesting is the J does have a higher percent chance to hit the ammo, but it's located in the left arm. The Executioner has the ammo, again, in that right torso. It does also have the Gauss rifle, which is, it explodes, but it's only like 20 points of damage, so it's not going to be enough to kill the mech or likely even get in far enough into the structure to really do a ton of damage. So that's that. Not much to say here. Both of these mechs extremely tough. I mean, anything in the 90s in terms of survivability is a mech I want to take. I'm actually very surprised it doesn't have more engine deaths on both because of those under-armored left and right torsos. You can see that right off the bat. Those yellow lines represent, based on the armor total, what the average distribution should be. So the spread on this armor really not great. Over-armored on the arms and legs, very under-armored on the side torsos. So with a 95-ton mech with basically 100% on the legs, I'm expecting mobility to look pretty good. But let's take a look. So the first thing you'll notice here is, the up and down, right? And that is the way Battlytics engages mask. Does not want the mech to freeze on the battlefield. You never have to make a check if you turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, right? So it's in, basically you're maintaining your maximum target mod with this pattern. And the way it ends up shaking out is the mobility looks identical across both mechs, as you could imagine. There's literally nothing different about how these mechs move. So they're a 4.6 mech. They do have the jump jets. If they do take a mobility hit and their hip is frozen or something along those lines, you do have those jump jets to get you out of trouble. Or if the mast does freeze up, again, you can use the jump jets. Granted, you're dealing with a piloting check on the way down. Hey, it is what it is. Sometimes the life and death situation. The legs are packed out with criticals. Again, you're looking at maximum armor coverage. So overall, these mechs are maintaining a 1.9 target mod, which is really good because remember, it's a 4.6 mech, so their maximum technically is 2. When they engage the mask, it can be 3. So very, very little degradation on the target mod. So overall, you can rely on this mech to get from point A to point B, in a 10 to 12 turn game without a problem. All right, and now on to my favorite efficiency. So we have, 2 mechs that perform identically, except for on the damage side. You have the Prime that's dealing more damage on the back end, and then you've got the J that's dealing more damage in the front half. They've got slightly different BVs, so how does it shake out? Well, survivability wasn't a huge factor, right? Both of them were sub 10% deaths, so it didn't really affect the damage as much as I would have thought. The one thing I will note is that because the deaths come on later, it affects the J more. but it's marginal. So if you look at the net change, right, sort of the damage loss over time, the prime is at 2.6, the J is at 2.9. So again, very, very marginal, but it's there. As far as the efficiency ratings go, these guys are okay. They're above average performers. I was expecting more, but the prime is at a 6.78, the J is at a 6.89. We know clan mechs, especially when they start loading in tech and they get big and they have lots of armor, they get expensive very, very quickly. These two are tough as nails, but they just don't have that damage output, I don't think, that you would expect to see from a clan assault mech. If you compare this to like the Marauder 2C or the Warhawk, those things are in the high 300s in terms of average calculated damage. You know, these guys are still, I mean, it's still an absurd amount of damage. You know, on average, more than 20 points of damage per turn. So, you know, let that sink in. It's a lot. That's on average. But at the end of the day, the point cost, the way it washes out, these guys are basically 6.78 and 6.89 respectively for the Prime and the J. So what's different? Well, when we look at the gunnery sensitivity, still similar there. The Prime obviously has a lower sensitivity. It's just not doing as much. It has less of damage loss. You know, even though it's doing more on the back end, it's not substantial enough to really warrant much. Now, the J, on the other hand, you can see a bit of an uptick, especially because so much of its damage is variable, meaning everything relies on a cluster, right? You roll that HAG 40, you got to roll to see how many hit. Same thing with the trio of SRM6s. So if you miss, right, with one of those, you know, I think it's you know, it's much more challenging. And then when you do hit, you're not dealing as much damage. I don't know. It's an interesting mech, and we'll talk about that when we get into the threat, because you'll see this thing. You know, it's nothing to mess around with, but at the same time, it is a roll of the dice type of mech. It's a mech I think Tom would really enjoy to play, as he loves to leave his life to the vagaries of fate. So anyway, on to the sensitivity analysis there. So these mechs, you know, basically have a fairly steady growth. At Gunnery 4, you know, and you wouldn't really take a Clan Executioner at Gunnery 4, but they're abysmal. I mean, they're right at the meat of the, they're average, and to me that's no good. I'm looking for 7s, right? I'm looking for things in that range. And if you put a Gunnery 1 pilot in these guys, I mean, it will skyrocket the price. But, you know, you start to see some actual efficiency out of these mechs. Although Gunnery 2, especially for the J, does seem to be the peak, whereas with the Prime, it does seem to be a little bit more of a steady increase. So overall, in terms of efficiency, both of these mechs are solid performers. You know, they both get a B+. The J and the Prime, it's very interesting. Completely different loadouts, but in terms of how they perform on the battlefield, you've got one with very strong direct damage, and you've got one that is a crit finder, but at the end of the day, the efficiency of them is about the same. So that's kind of cool in the sense that, you know, you can sort of surgically choose, you know, which tool you need for a given job. And that is, of course, the beauty of having Omnimechs. But let's take a look at the threat. All right, so we're going to start with the Prime here. And the Prime has an Alpha Strike potential of 39 points. So it's not a huge Alpha Strike potential, right? You've got the Gauss, you've got a couple of ER large, and, you know, the machine gun's sort of negligible until you're within 3 inches, but 39 points. It's not insignificant, but again, when you compare it to some other clan mechs, it doesn't have that effect, you know, that some of the other ones do, right? I think you're picking up what I'm laying down. So let's look at the threat envelope. This is cool. Again, 360-degree arc of fire, because you can arm flip with the Gauss rifle. The ER large, the Gauss, right? They reach out very, very far. They can deal a substantial amount of damage. And if I'm not mistaken, the ER large, the clan ER large, outranges the ER PPC. I'll have to look that one up, but I think I'm right there. It's sort of a weird thing. So let's talk about where I would play this mech. So you can see the difference between the white bar and the dark red bar. The dark red being like, if I hit with everything, what's my Alpha Strike? The white bar being, if I'm looking at my target number and I'm averaging my damage based on the probability of actually hitting, what am I going to deal? You can see once you get within 7 inches, the white bar is very, very close to the dark red bar. And that means, again, you're very likely to deal your maximum damage. And that's because this thing's really only working with 3 weapons, right? I mean, yeah, you got the machine guns, but fact of the mouth for a minute, you got 3 big guns. And at a range of 7 inches, your mod is very low, very, very doable with this trio of weapons. So how would I do this mech on the field? Well, I mean, I would put it in a fire support role, right? 2ER large, clan gauss, very mobile. You can get it into the position you want. You can get the angle of fire you want. You can jump it up on a hill or a building to clear intervening terrain. Things really can't hide from you. You're not going to get hamstrung. And if you do get ambushed by a light or a locust or whatever makes it across the field, like, who cares? You have so much armor, so much survivability. Those things can just shoot you all day long, front and back. It's not going to matter. Secondly, I would play this mech as a defender. This would be my second choice for this mech. Dig it in, let it rain in some death from the back, and it'll do a great job. It won't let you down. And then lastly, I would say a front line. March it right up the field. It can do what it needs to do. I think overall this mech really versatile, and again, the jump jets really coming into play. No real minimum range to speak of. I know the Gauss, it does dip off a little bit at 2 and 1 inches, but overall, I mean, I think this mech could play basically at any range, and the 4.6 makes it just as competitive as any other inner sphere heavy mech, to get it in. So at the end of the day, that's my assessment on the Prime. Let's take a look at the J. Okay, and now the J. Now this is where, I was talking about how this is sort of a vagaries of fate, roll of the die type of mech. Look at the Alpha Strike capability, 76 points of damage. Now the probability of you actually dealing that is very low, as you can see from the separation between the white bar and the red bar. But even your peak ACD is 45.6 with this mech versus the Prime, which was 30.3. So you can see there is a tremendous amount of damage potential with the J, which is very cool. However, you got to have a hot hand with this one. So overall, let's take a look at it. So this mech, you absolutely have to get this mech into 9 inches. You've got to get those SRMs into range. Otherwise, it's just not, the potential's not there. What's interesting, I said earlier, you get about 10 rounds of firing with each SRM. That is, in fact, true. However, keep in mind that, it's going to take you a few rounds to get into the SRM range. So, basically you will have a decent amount of firepower, I think, with those SRMs. The Hag, though, again, 12 rounds. I just feel like you're going to run this thing, all the hoppers dry very quickly. We'll see. So in terms of the threat envelope, so that Hyper Assault Gauss, has decent arc of fire from the front. Those SRMs, again, all mounted on the left arm. You can kind of shoot behind you, by torso twisting and aiming back with the left arm. So you can do some things there, but largely you want to keep targets in front of you with this mech. The jump jets help with that a lot. Again, if you do get outmaneuvered but you win initiative, you can use your jump jets to put yourself in an optimal position. The other thing that I find interesting here is that the Hag does have a minimum range on it. So even though you want to be at close range, at the same time you don't want to be too close. Anything beyond that 3-inch mark is really where you start to see some degradation of your average damage, which is not a great thing. But regardless, when I think about rolls, I have to play this mech in close, or I'm going to play it as a frontline mech. I'm going to take this mech and march it across the field, absorb a bunch of damage, fire my Hag on the way in. I'm going to use my SRM-6s at point blank as much as I can. I think this mech needs buddies to be successful. It needs other Omni mechs or Clan second line mechs that have Gauss rifles, that have ERPPCs. If you are playing a big points game and you pair this thing up with a Massacari or a Marauder 2C, you're firing a trio of PPCs, you're blowing gaping holes in people's armor, and then you drop in, 40 hyper assault gauss frags and, 18 SRMs, you're going to be dealing some serious, you're going to put things out of their misery very, very quickly, especially when you're in the Dark Age and most things have XL engines. You're going to be hitting engine, you're going to be doing some serious damage here. So I think that this mech is probably much more valuable than it looks on paper if, again, you're pairing it with the right mechs in the Star or in the Lance, whichever you prefer there. So that's my take on the J. So if I have to pick a winner here, I don't think I can. I think, again, I was talking about, which tool, which tool in the Swiss Army knife, the Clan Army knife perhaps, that you want to pick. I don't know which one is really better. If I had a Gauss rifle to my head, had to pick one, I'd probably go with the Prime. I'm a direct fire guy. Tom would probably go with the J. I know he loves rolling lots of dice and relying on tables and random things to happen. But, at the end of the day, it's a tough choice. So, overall, great design, really cool mech, really neat take on the classic Executioner. And it was kind of fun to see how differently these things perform, even though fundamentally it's the same mech. Same survivability, same mobility, but just swapping out those weapons, makes it perform and behave completely differently, from one Executioner to the next. So, that's it, guys. That's all I got. This Comparo is done. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, if you are looking for an Executioner, you can get them, brand new one in the Kickstarter. This mech can be used either in that 30-50 era, or you can use it all the way in this new up-and-coming ilClan era. So really exciting stuff there. You can find them over at Aries Games and Minis. He does have all the Kickstarter stuff in stock. I know he's been working on keeping stock. Of course, as soon as it comes in, it goes very quickly. But check over there. He's got phenomenal prices, really, really great discounts on everything. So keep your eyes open for that. Also, thanks to the Catalyst team for sending this over. I know they were excited to look at the Executioner. So thanks to Ray, Aaron, and Joe over there. Appreciate you guys sending this stuff over for us to look at. Always fun to take a look at some of these new and exciting cutting-edge variants. So guys, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Of course, you can listen to our soundtrack. It's another great way to support the channel. You could get that on Amazon, iTunes. Just look up Death from Above Wargaming. Spotify as well has it. You can also help us out on Patreon if you're interested in that. Check out the link in the description. And also down there, we've got links to all of our partners. Camo Specs, Xmark, Ion Radio, Hardware Studios. So some really cool stuff down there for you guys to check out. But that's it. I'm all done. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great night. And stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming.